I stand before you today as a candidate for the Democratic nomination for the presidency of the United States of America. I am not the candidate of Black America, although I am Black and proud. I am not the candidate of the women's movements in this country, although I am a woman and equally proud of that. I am not the candidate of any political bosses or fat cats or special interests. I stand here without any endorsements from any big name politicians or celebrities or any other kind of prop. I do not intend to offer to you the same tired and glib cliches which for too long have been an accepted way of our political life. I am the candidate of the people of America. And my presence before you now symbolizes a new era in our political history. I have always earnestly believed in the great potential of our America. Our constitutional democracy will soon celebrate its 200th anniversary, effective testimony to the longevity of our cherished Constitution and its unique Bill of Rights, which continues to give to the world an inspirational message of freedom and liberty. We Americans are a dynamic people. Wait 1 second. I see reporters and photographers here, but I need to give the rest of you the larger picture. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and when I was 3 years old, I was sent to live on a farm in the West Indies, Barbados, with my grandmother. The oldest daughter, I knew I needed to help out, which was more than I could handle. Odessa, can you finish your homework? Muriel, please clean up your room. If you do so, I'll ask Mom if we can go to the beach. The beach was always a way to get my sisters to accomplish things. My first political lesson, always have skin in the game. The beach was paradise because we lived on a farm, but we won't go there just yet. Much nicer here. My father, Charles St. Hill, he sat with his newspaper and tobacco pipe. And my mother, Ruby Seal, was in the kitchen washing off the vegetables, looking out the window. However, I was sent for by my mama. Shirley! When my mama sent for me in that tone, it was one or two things. I had done something wrong, or I had done something wrong. Did you pick them fruit? Yes, Mama. Looks like a mighty storm brewing. Did you get your sister's clothes ready for church in the morning? Yes, Mama. We got to pray them vegetables get plenty water. My father will interrupt. Every day, them vegetables get water, and every day you act like them vegetables never get any water. My mother was very religious. We went to church 3 times every Sunday. Always raised us in a strict manner. We would learn from her to expect the best from ourselves. Although nothing would prepare me for the news of Mama and Papa leaving. You will be the Mima of the house now, Lee. Seemed like watching the rain pour that night would represent my tears. Mama and Papa were part of a group of Beijings that immigrated to New York. With my parents gone, my grandmother, Mama Seal, began her teachings. The 1 plus the 1, 2. The 2 plus the 3, 5. You will repeat, good morning. Good mornings. Oh, which was a big mistake that came with a slap across my face, all because I put an S at the end of morning. You see, on the island, no one really understood what a lisp was. I'm sure you have noticed I speak with a slight speech challenge. That would get grandmother really angry. You have to speak clearly In America, they don't have time for nonsense. You cannot work if you cannot speak clearly. I would do better, Mama Seal. My grandmother was stern when it came to education. She would hand me 2 books every day, and I was expected to report back correctly every day, or I would have to pick a switch. It's amazing what a little pressure would do. I struggled, and I took many switches. My grandmother entered me into a speech competition, but it's something so frightening about being in a competition for speaking for a child with a speech problem. They will laugh at me, Ma. Nonsense. You're just searching for the word. God made you this way for a reason. I walked to school for the We the People competition, and I was so nervous, shaking at that podium, could hardly get my words out. We, the people. In the middle of my speech, I looked out into the audience and noticed not one person was laughing. They all stood at attention with a gaze I've never seen before. So I continued. The people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. I won that speech competition that day. And my grandmother, my sisters, we all celebrated. But by how else? At the beach. On the island, surrounded by love, no electricity, just the nature up above. Mama Seal, sisters, cousins, we played in the sand, enjoyed the land. Well, my carefree life would change. Mama and Papa sent for us to move back to New York. When I was 10, we returned to Brooklyn, New York at the height of the Great Depression, a severe time of economic hardship, particularly for Black folks. My father worked in a bakery. He loved talking about politics and social issues. We share that in common. He read books and always quoted something from the newspaper when we were at dinner, and I soaked it up. That President Franklin Roosevelt is a master. Listen, Shirley, this is the way to true power in this country. Politics. This program will bring more work to America. It's called the New Deal. I wrote a song for you girls. Listen. I'm trying to tell you about the New Deal. Hey, hey, hey. I said I'm trying to tell you about the New Deal. Let's be clear. It was always difficult for Black people. But I listened to my father that night, and I knew there was more. I attended and graduated from Brooklyn College, became a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority incorporated while training to be a teacher. The sisterhood inspired me to join many campus and community organizations, and it sparked my interest in politics. I love taking political science. It sharpened my public speaking skills. We need to question the why. We need to seek knowledge, such as the great W.E.B. Du Bois. We need knowledge as our radical movements in this country. It was at that moment my professor, Mr. Louis Wazoff, said to me,
"Have you ever considered going into politics?"
You forget 2 things. I am Black and I am a woman. It wasn't too long before I found love, or shall I say, it found me, in the form of Mr. Conrad Chisholm. I honestly thought that I would never get married. You see, I was engaged twice before. The first time to a man who courted me, and the engagement was soon broken off when I discovered he was already married to a woman in Jamaica. I don't suppose that could have worked out. But Mr. Conrad was always someone I would see at City Hall. He remained persistent. I was hoping to take you to lunch one of these days. Mister, I don't have time for nonsense and foolishness. I don't know who those people are, but I'm Conrad. What is it that you do, Mr. Conrad? I'm an investigator. What is it that you investigate? Nonsense and foolishness. You're a very funny man, Mr. Conrad. Even funnier at the lunch hour, I suppose. After a successful run at being a teacher, my passions for being in the public service grew. So I decided to run for the New York State Assembly. My ideals for this time was perfect. I mean, we're in the mid-60s and the civil rights movement was under full swing. Unfortunately, one person who was very important to me was not around to see it. My father and I shared so much. He left some money for me in my name, but there was none left for my siblings, which left a rift that would never be mended. And all of this during the time of my first major political battle against Mr. James Farmer for the 12th District. Now, I can tell you this. Ms. Chisholm needs to stay in the kitchen. I mean, we all know what real woman's work is about, and it isn't in the political arena. My husband didn't take too well to these remarks. Now, I did some digging, Shirley, and this man is not to be played with. Now, he's going to push you, and that means proving that you are not fit to be in politics. We need to be quick and decisive. No long, drawn-out battle, do you hear me? Because next, he's going to the newspapers. Do you hear me? Yes, I hear you. And he was right. A long, drawn-out campaign never did any good. So I quickly gathered my supporters in the PTA and the Women's Bridges Club. So whenever Mr. Farmer spoke about women's work, my support base would backfire on him. And Farmer had a language disparity with the Latino voters. And vota para mí, I speak Spanish fluently. All across the nation, activists were working hard for equal rights for all Americans. My ambitions will take me all the way to the U.S. Congress. My early days, I received all kinds of remarks and jokes while in the House of Representatives, particularly from this one gentleman who every day he saw me would come up to me and say, "Miss Chisholm, Ma, how you doing?" I said, I'm well. "Ma, how does it feel to make 42.5 like me?" I said, "What did you just say to me?" I said, "How does it feel to make 42.5 like me?" Which was our salary amount. I said, two things. First of all, since you can't stand the idea of my making 42.5 like you, every morning I walk in here, banish. Banish so you don't have to confront me with this 42.5. And second thing, notice, every time that I show up, I am paving the way for others who look like me to make 42.5. And traditionally, the senior members of the Congress gets to speak first. So it wasn't no surprise when every time I rose to speak, other members rose too. Now this went on for some time until I got so tired, I marched right down to the podium, and so the speaker had no choice but to hear me speak. Mr. Speaker, when a young woman graduates from college and starts looking for a job, she is likely to have a frustrating and even demeaning experience ahead of her. If she walks into an office for an interview, the first question is, do you type? There is a calculated system of prejudice that lies unspoken behind that question. Why is it acceptable for women to be nurses, teachers, secretaries, but totally unacceptable for them to be doctors, lawyers, managers, and members of Congress?
Congresswoman Chisholm, you have mentioned previously that you are pro-choice.
I am a strong supporter of women's right to choose. I believe women are capable of moving in many other fields.
So that's a yes.
I am answering the question. I believe women are capable of moving into many other fields as professionals, and that would include a woman's right to choose.
All of our candidates have their views on the Vietnam War. Where do you stand?
I believe our involvement in the Vietnam War remains at this time to be a terrible tragedy. To intervene in the war was an ill-conceived blunder whose consequences all of us have had to suffer.
What do you say to those who would call your campaign a stalking horse?
This idea to be a stalking horse is something I cannot connect very well with. It means in politics to be a phony candidate. I am a real candidate running for the presidency of the United States to win. Everyone had their eyes on the Florida primaries. I have to introduce you to the major players. Senator Edmund S. Muskie. He was out to show that he was far out in front, that he could not be denied. Senator Herbert H. Humphrey wanted to show that he still had vote-getter appeal. Senator George S. McGovern was out to show the country that he was not poison in the South. And Senator Henry M. Jackson wanted to prove the other candidates were all far too left for the voters. Finally, we have Governor George C. Wallace of Alabama, who was resolutely refusing to run as a third-party candidate. He was for sure that Florida, for good reason, would be the first in a string of victories. And so goes Florida. And how could I forget this particular statement?
Today, I have stood where once Jefferson Davis stood and took an oath to my people. It is very appropriate that from this cradle of the Confederacy, this very heart of the great Anglo-Saxon Southland, that today we sound the drum for freedom, as have our generation of forebears before us done time and again down through history. Let us rise to the call of freedom-loving blood that is in us, and send our answer to the tyranny that clanks its chains upon the South. In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth, I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny, and I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
There were a lot of people who wanted me to go into Florida, which is the reason I had to go. One in particular was Gwen Cherry, a lawyer from Miami who we met during the organizing of the National Women's Political Caucus back in 1971. She spoke highly of me, particularly in a Southern accent, saying, "I think Mrs. Chisholm would do well here, more than the other candidates because of the larger woman voter population. I think she is very, very generous to put herself forward because she's going to hold the other candidates to the human qualities of life." besides Gwen Cherry, their other black elected officials did not like the idea of my running. I mean, some would say, oh, she would get the heck beaten out of her in this state. Or worse than that, she would make fools of those of us who've already committed ourselves to other candidates. Besides that, I would get the same questions over and over again. Are you a serious candidate? If you know you cannot win, why are you running? And which of the major candidates do you support? In my own ear, it sounded like a broken record. There is little space in the political scheme of things for an independent, creative thinker, for a fighter. If you're going to put yourself forward, you have to be prepared for the questions that come your way. You got to pay the price. And I was ready for the doubters and the naysayers. Like most poor candidates, I did a lot of my speaking at colleges. I mean, if you don't have the money to hire out auditoriums and have crowds to fill it, a college is your next best answer. Where were you? I don't want to hear any crocodile tears now that you discovered the busing issue. I have never been a supporter of the busing, as the bureaucrats like to put it, to correct racial imbalances. The root cause of segregated schools is that black children have been herded out of their neighborhoods. Busing some blacks to a school, a white school, isn't solving anything. Open house is the real answer. But as long as an artificial one exists, it's better than none. The moolah, or the money, is what separated you from the big boys. Now, everyone on my campaign were volunteers. We relied on fundraisers for Chisholm's, party for Chisholm, bowling, anything you name it. In the end, I would spend less than $10,000. I mean, it was all I had. There were no alternatives. And by the end of the campaign, it had all fallen to pieces. And if it couldn't get any worse, my campaign manager decided to quit. Fellow Americans, we have looked in vain to the Nixon administration for the courage, the spirit, and the character, the words to lift us, to bring out the best in us, to rekindle in each of us our faith in the American dream. Yet all we have received in return is the same smooth exercise in political manipulation, deceits, and deception. The abiding concern of this administration has been one of political expediency rather than the needs of man's nature. But we are entering into a new era in which we must as Americans, must demand stature and size in our leadership. Leadership which is fresh. Leadership which is open, and leadership which is receptive to the problems of all Americans.
Governor Wallace was shot just after he finished a campaign speech at a Laurel, Maryland shopping center about 15 miles from the nation's capital.
Power concedes nothing. How else can any man rise to power except by smothering out dissenting voices? You don't make progress by standing on the sideline. It's important for me to keep going. I will manage my own campaign. Surely, a man tried to stab you at the airport. Now, we did well not to let that leak out. We are running low on money and the letters are getting worse. I will manage.
Shirley Chisholm became the first African-American woman to serve in Congress, and in 1972, she became the first woman to seek the Democratic presidential nomination.
I am the candidate of the people of America.
She discussed her campaign for the White House right here on the Morning Press during a special broadcast from the 1972 Democratic National Convention in Miami, Florida. Mrs. Chisholm, how do you account for the fact that no more blacks than half have come to your cause during this primary and at the convention now?
Well, you have to recognize, first of all, gentlemen, you have to really recognize that I am doing something that has never been done before in this country. It's a matter of inclusion, reorientation, and education. Never before since the inception of the Republic has a woman seriously run for the presidency of the United States. Now, I'm not talking about someone going out to the convention and nominating someone as a mere gesture of symbolism or tokenism. I'm talking about someone going out here on the highways and the byways for the past 7.5 months and saying to the American people that indeed this is a multifaceted society, that Mrs. Chisholm can also be considered for the presidency of the United States. You see, I was breaking the norms. There's a different tradition in which white males and have been the only gentlemen to guide this ship of state. So you don't expect people, black, white, man, or women, to suddenly break with a tradition that has been steeped ever since the inception of this republic. See, I have faith in the American people. I believe that we are smart enough to correct our mistakes. I believe that we are intelligent enough to recognize the talents, the dedication, and passion that all Americans, including women and minorities, possess. I know from my travels from on the highways and byways to different small cities and towns in America that the people are ready. We have a vast potential to get this country together. I know that millions of Americans agree with me from all vast walks of life when I say that leadership is more than putting your ear to the ground and going with public opinion. It's in getting to what is really needed, having the vision and the courage to make it happen. Building a strong and just society which is in its diversity and is in its quality of life. I stand before you today to repudiate the ridiculous notion that the American people will not vote for a candidate just because he is not white or she is not male. I do not believe that the vast majorities of Americans will continue to perpetuate this narrow-minded belief. I believe that the people are convinced, are in the mood for a different politics and strategy moving forward. A few days after the press conference, I wondered if my supporters in the Congressional Black Caucus will hold up. You see, Perry Mitchell of Baltimore and John Conyers, they pledged to help me. Well, John Conyers, half and half, he couldn't make up his mind on. It turns out that Perry Mitchell was more faithful to his politics, and John, he was never on board in the first place. But as I said before, delegates is the name of the game. And after 6 months of campaigning in 11 primaries, I have 28 delegates prepared to vote for me at this convention. Because that's the name of the game. So this makes me a broker to be able to pull people into the body of politics. So there's more than one ballot. You can keep all your delegates on the first ballot, but if there's more than one, all bets are off. People can vote for whoever they like. So for McGovern to win this, he would need it on the first ballot. Now this gave me a little bit of an edge, but I needed more to get on the second ballot, which was problem number one facing me. Problem number two was trying to unify the Congressional Black Caucus, which had been split in two for months over political gain. I found myself stuck between two minorities. Blacks didn't want women's rights talk, and women's didn't want any black issues addressed. And then I heard rumors that my supporters in the Congressional Black Caucus were contemplating taking their delegates over to McGovern. I had to convince them to vote my way out right. When I entered the room, I had that same feeling like a child back home in Barbados, that nervous shaking at the competition, could hardly speak. And then I thought about what my grandmother told me. And then I had the words. My brothers and sisters, let me tell it to you this afternoon like it really is. You have one thing going for you, brothers and sisters. One thing. Your one vote. Don't sell that vote out. The black people of America are watching us. Find out what these candidates who need our votes are going to do for you concretely, not rhetorically. I want to make an announcement releasing my delegates so they can go to whomever they want. Well, we just lowered the big boom. Just got to pray over the matter now. It was very difficult looking into my volunteers' eyes that night. A lot of tears in that room. McGovern won California, keeping 271 delegates, which eliminated any chance we had at a running. In unity, there is strength. And I want to make it quite clear that it was the delegates here tonight. The delegates here tonight that made history. I just remember my husband in his usual voice. You fought the good fight. I ran for office in spite of the hopeless odds, just to demonstrate the sheer refusal to accept the status quo. You know, on the day I made my announcement, I took a long walk down the aisles. Reminded me of that long walk to that podium back in Barbados. I wish my grandmother and father were here to see me.